Good morning, good afternoon, wherever this finds you. Welcome to the 71st Emerging Growth Conference. And today we are focusing on metals, mining, resources, and energy companies. I'm Anna Berry. I'll be your host today. So just a few notes. We're running until about 4 p.m. Eastern time. And when we switch to the next company, you might see a black screen for a moment. Don't go anywhere. That's just us moving over to the next presenter. Obviously, if you experience downtime for more than a minute or two, refresh your browser. And our platform does work best on Google Chrome. So if you're watching from an Apple device, you have to hit the play button to start the session. Now, all of our conferences, they're uploaded to the Emerging Growth Conference YouTube channel. So please subscribe at youtube.com/Emerging Growth Conference. Now, today, during each company's presentation, you can submit questions through the webcast module, and we will attempt to address as many of these at the end of the presentation. Let's begin with NextSource Materials Inc. It trades on the TSX under the symbol NEXT and on the OTCQB under the symbol NSRCF. It is a battery materials development company based in Toronto, Canada, that is intent on becoming a vertically integrated global supplier of battery materials through the mining and value-added processing of graphite and other minerals. Happy to welcome Executive VP Brent Nykoliation. Nice to see you, Brent.
Hi, nice to see you again, Anna. How are you?
Great. We're happy that you're back on the conference. We want to give you the floor and call me back when you're ready for questions.
Great. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And hello to all the listeners and viewers. So if you're new to NextSource, we are a graphite producer and we are in Madagascar is where our mine is. So as Anna mentioned, we are right now very intent on becoming a vertically integrated project to supply battery grade graphite, which we call anode material, into the EV supply chains and basically the electrification of the automobiles, which is where graphite really is having a lot of its growth and its trajectories for the next decade. It's a very exciting space, and we're very lucky that we are actually up and running on the mine side. So I'll take you through today just on what our capabilities are and how we plan on moving into this sector in a very substantial way and our growth plans going forward in the next 3, 6, 12, and 5-year plan. So if you're new to graphite, graphite has always been known to be on the industrial side, so it's very crucial in the making of steel, but lately it's been absolutely talked about for its role in the batteries. So graphite roughly represents about half your battery. It's on the anode side, which is the negative side of the battery. It's the largest raw material by volume in a lithium-ion battery. Even though the batteries are named after the cathode, it's graphite no matter what the chemistry is. So the two dominant chemistries, not to get technical, are the LFP, which is your iron phosphate battery, lithium iron phosphate, and then you have a nickel manganese cobalt battery. And basically electric vehicles will use either one of these chemistries, but it does not matter. Graphite is a very large component. It doesn't matter what the chemistry is. Just to understand how much graphite is in actually a vehicle, if you look at an average Tesla Model S, you're looking at about almost 120 kilos or about 260 pounds per car of graphite in that battery. So one of the things that you need to really understand about the graphite and the anode is that you don't actually start with battery grade graphite, you start with flake graphite. So it actually takes 2 tons of flake graphite roughly to make 1 ton of battery anode material, that anode graphite material. So again, you need a lot of graphite. We're going to show you just what the projections are right now in terms of growth, both for the battery side. So this is the projections from Benchmark Mineral Intelligence out of London, and they track the demand for graphite, especially for the sectors. And this is for graphite anode material. So this is the finished form of graphite that goes into your battery. And you're looking at massive growth projected for the next decade and beyond. So again, very, very steep demand. And this is really translating into a direct demand for the flake graphite. So flake graphite is actually the precursor material. It's your starting feedstock that you then make into a battery grade graphite. And again, the amount of graphite that's required, you're looking at anywhere from a 5 to 7 times lift in the amount of graphite that is required. So today there's roughly 1.5 million tons of graphite produced globally in the world, and that's going to move to almost 9 million tons by the year 2040. And why is that happening? It's to do with batteries. So if you look at the graph in the bottom, you can see that, almost, I guess from the last 30, 40 years, The industrial uses of graphite, that steel making process, has been dominant. It's about 80% of the consumption of graphite, but for the first time ever this year, it's the battery applications that are expected to eclipse the traditional steel making and become the dominant offtake and consumption for graphite. And it's going to be a massive shift. You're looking at it going from 90% battery to about 10% industrial. Over 5 years ago, that was reversed. So it was really 90% of the world's graphite went to steel making process and then 10% for battery. So a massive shift happening in the demand for graphite. So what does this actually mean, and how do you put this in the context? So everybody's heard of Tesla, I'm assuming, and there's a big gigafactory being built in Nevada. They have one in Texas, one in Berlin, etc. But let's just focus on one actual battery plant for Tesla in Nevada. And this was actually at full capacity, generating 140 gigawatt of battery capacity in this plant. Graphite itself is your largest consumption and requirement in that plant, and it would consume up to 170,000 tons of graphite. What does that mean? That's 13% of the current world supply of graphite in one facility. And there's hundreds of these facilities being planned and being built, and there's probably 60 to 70 coming online very shortly, most of those being obviously in Asia. But again, it just shows you the true criticality of how much required material, how much battery materials are required for this energy transition. So when you look at that in terms of what does this mean for mines, well, you're looking at roughly, for the natural graphite side, you'll need 100 brand new mines to come online. And these are sizable mines. So NextSource, our mine right now, Madagascar, is 17,000 tons. We just entered in production just last year and are ramping up to be nameplate capacity very shortly. But I mean, the average mine is 56,000 tons, and you need 100 more of those. So again, you can see the other commodities that go into a battery, but graphite by far is the one that's required, and we need a lot more mines of. So there is a tremendous shortage of graphite globally that needs to be brought in line to meet these demands. When you actually take the graphite from the back of a mine in the plant, that looks like silver oatmeal. It's a flake graphite, but you have to do three other things actually, to put it into a battery. You have to spherinize it, where you round that flake, you make it into almost a potato chip, a circle, and then you purify it to 99.9% carbon, and then you have to coat it, and that's called spherical purified coated material, or CSPG for short. We just call that coated anode material. What's really critical about this particular slide is that China controls the midstream, this process of actually spheronizing and purifying your graphite. And 100% of the world's graphite, no matter where it's mined, is processed in China. China itself controls 70% of the world's graphite mines, and then they do a lot of the coating as well, but really you're looking at them just dominating this battery supply chain. Many of you probably aren't aware that the United States has 0 graphite deposits. So you import 100% of your graphite, and there is virtually no processing of the spheronized purification and coating process in the United States. There's companies that are trying to do that, but they're not commercially scalable yet. So the United States is completely dominant and reliant on the Chinese supply. And that is causing a lot of problems with the geopolitical climates as we see today. So what's happening today with graphite? So graphite right now has been deemed a critical battery material in 7 of the G7. So all G7 nations have seen graphite along with other critical battery materials as deemed critical, especially in the United States, where China recently, back in 2023, restricted all exports of graphite into the United States. And then most recently, you probably saw with the Biden administration that there was an Inflation Reduction Act, which if you wanted subsidy on your electric vehicle, if you're buying one, you can get up to $7,500 credit towards that vehicle. However, it cannot contain any Chinese graphite or any graphite that's processed in China or any other of foreign entities of concern. And a foreign entity of concern is really 4 countries. It's Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia. Given that China dominates the supply chains of graphite, this is a major problem for the United States. And then most recently, the Biden administration also put on a 25% tariff that if you want to use any graphite from China, then it's also going to be paying 25% more if you choose to use that and not go for the subsidies. So this is a big, big issue. If you're a consumer looking to buy electric vehicles, where is this material going to come from? And this is where the OEMs, the car companies, are greatly concerned about what they need to do to transition away from these non-foreign entity concerns for their supply of graphite. And this is where NextSource comes in. So our company has a mine. We actually have now got the ability to go and actually produce that active anode material, that spheronizing, the purification, the coating, all these steps to actually put it into a battery. And I'll go into more detail, but this really is what NextSource's core capability is, the fact that we can be a vertically integrated company. So our graphite mine itself, as I mentioned, is located in Madagascar. We opened the mine up last year. We're in the south part of Madagascar, a very remote area, not anywhere near the rainforest. We're actually in a very dry area. We have 2 ports that we can service from. This is actually our mine as it looks today. This is the 17,000 ton operation. And we're just approaching now our nameplate capacity by next month. So again, you can see from our topography that we're in a very remote area. So then we rely on renewable energy. So right now we have a solar field that contributes about 1/3 of our mine's power requirements from renewable energy. And we'll be looking to scale that up to about 50% for our next stage of expansion. And right now we have all of our offtake right now consumed with phase 1, 17,000, going to 2 real customers. The first one is on the refractory steel making side. So ThyssenKrupp, you probably recognize that logo. You've probably ridden on their escalators, etc. And then the other half of that material is be going to the battery world. And we have a very unique relationship with a Japanese technical partner who allows us right now to actually go into these markets very aggressively and established. So what we've done since day one when we were in Madagascar is we've always been operating to the highest environmental standards and for transparency. So again, what's very crucial for us is we started and did everything to Equator Principles, to the highest standards of the International Finance Corporation, making sure we're very good stewards. So that's very important as we move through and deal with the communities, the customers, ensure that we have a social license to operate. And again, we're very proud as a Canadian company operating in these areas that we do things to the highest standards. In fact, we're very proud that it was actually the locals that actually helped lobby the government for us to get our permits, both on the environmental as well as the mining permit. So that's a very proud thing for us. In terms of our actual deposit, we have almost virtually unlimited graphite in Madagascar. So Madagascar has been known to have one of the highest quality graphites in the world. It's been exporting graphite for decades. And we have a very, very large discovery. So our current mine right now, as I said, is 17,000 tons. So that has actually got a 100-year mine life. So we have over 100 years of graphite at 17,000 tons, and then we're looking to expand to 150,000 tons as we're growing to meet this market demand. And this deposit right now can easily accommodate that. So we have over 188 continuous miles of graphite all at the surface on our property. So virtually no shortage of graphite. We can expand as the market requires. So as I mentioned before, we're looking at expanding our mine right now. The picture on the right is our current mine at 17,000 ton capacity, which is a relatively small mine, but we have plans to grow that aggressively. So this picture on the left is actually our blueprint and plans for our expansion to 150,000 tons, so 9 times expansion. And that's for us to be able to meet the demand that we expect to see in the very short coming years. So we're ready, the plans are done. We just need to be able to have investment and decision to move forward. And that's all predicated on our discussions with offtake partners, those OEMs. So one of the things that we did very differently and what sets NextSource apart from other graphite projects is we have actually licensed a very well-established processing IP to actually take your flake graphite and then move it into the battery anode material. And remember, I mentioned there's those 3 steps. You have to spheronize your flake, you have to purify your flake, and then you have to coat your flake, and then it goes into a battery. And what we did is we've actually licensed a best-in-class processing IP. This actual IP is already being used in the supply chains of very notable OEMs. So for example, the process that we have is already supplying major OEMs in Japan. So Panasonic supplies Tesla, Toyota, Honda, etc. So these are already established processes supplying OEMs today, and that's exclusive to NextSource. We're taking that technology and we'll be applying it to our first anode facility, which will be built in Mauritius. Mauritius is just an island off the east coast of Madagascar. And we have already announced that we'll be building our first facility there. We've already raised the money, so we already have that funded. And you can see the location. We're right on a shipping port. And again, great location for us because Mauritius is a tax-free haven. very low corporate tax rate, but more importantly, it's on a very important shipping hub right up to the key markets where we want to sell our battery grade graphite, and that's to Korea as well as Japan. Then we also have plans to actually expand and build much larger anode facilities in three key jurisdictions. United States, we're looking at the Middle East, as well as the EU, so in Europe. So again, these plans right now are also in process. So we're looking to expand our operations in the next 12 to 24 months. And again, all this is predicated on us being able to have our offtakes in place and gearing up with our discussions we're having right now with the automotive companies, showing them that we do have the ability to expand to meet their demands that they require. One of the things that is very unique about our company is we have a very significant shareholder, a very strategic shareholder. So we are 47% owned by a company called, it's actually a private fund called Vision Blue Resources out of the UK. And that particular fund person that actually introduced and started the fund is Sir Mick Davis. Sir Mick Davis is actually the chairman of our company, but he's kind of famous in the mining world. So he was the former CEO of Xstrata. Xstrata was one of the largest mining companies in the world. He grew that company from basically a very small market cap into a $60 billion operation and was bought by Glencore. And he also was the former CFO of Billiton and was responsible for merging Billiton and BHP to form the world's largest mining company. So with that track record, we have this individual and their team behind us as our strategic shareholders and very active in our expansion, in our development. So when you're looking at NextSource as a company to perhaps consider as an investment in the critical materials space, why would you want to look at us and what sets us again apart? Again, we're in that finite pool of actual graphite projects outside of China that's actually in production. We're actually capable of delivering a battery grade graphite to the electric vehicle supply chains as early as 2025, so next year. We're a vertically integrated project, which is very, very important. So we have a mine source. We actually have that security of supply. We can control the feedstock that goes into the battery anode material that goes into the car companies, because at the end of the day, that's very critical for them is where is this material coming from if you can't buy it from these particular foreign entities of concern. Once again, China. Exclusive access to established IP. We have licensed the technology that's already being used in the manufacturing of anode material for key OEMs and electric vehicle companies, i.e. Toyota and Tesla. Our mine is very, very large. Pardon me, our resource is very large, easily scalable. We have no shortage of graphite, and we can expand as the market requires. Our first anode facility will be up and running by the end of this year, commissioned in production early 2025. And we have very aggressive plans to grow both the mine in Madagascar ninefold, and then also build those additional anode facilities in those key jurisdictions, United States, the Middle East, and Europe. And again, what's governing that is the conversations we're having with the various OEMs. Depending on the timelines, the OEM and locations are all varied. So once again, if you're interested in NextSource, we do trade on the TSX, the large board in Canada, and then also on the OTC under these stock symbols. If you have any questions, certainly you can reach out to me directly at brent@nextsourcematerials.com, and I will get back to you. And thank you very much. Over to you, Anna.
Great job, Brent. Thank you for this. You touched upon this, but talk a little bit more about graphite in general. How much graphite is in a battery and why is it so useful?
So once again, graphite is a dominant raw input into a battery. So roughly half your battery is graphite. It's the largest raw material in that battery by volume. And what graphite does is it acts on the anode. So it's your negative side. And if you want to talk about just kind of the simple terms, consider graphite the highway and the lithium is your cars that go through the battery and basically give you the charge and discharge. And why graphite is really critical. A battery is actually a mixture of both natural graphite and artificial graphite, synthetic graphite. And why is there a mixture? And the mixture really helps with the characteristics of the car, and everybody wants to drive and get long mileage. They want to have a long lasting battery, and they want to be able to charge it in a very fast time. So synthetic graphite gives you the life cycles. It gives you the longevity of a battery. It gives you the fast charging. The natural graphite actually gives you the range. It's the energy density that actually you can get a lot more power into that battery by using natural graphite. So what you're seeing now is the chemistries, the formulations of these batteries are moving more in favor of natural graphite. So batteries, again, are that mixture. So certain battery companies use 50-50, some use 60% natural, 40%, and vice versa. So it all depends on the market, but really what you're looking at is an increase in the natural graphite going into these batteries. And once again, as I mentioned, it's incredibly, the growth right now, you're looking at almost a reversal of the actual consumption of graphite. 90% of the world's graphite consumption will be batteries in the next 5 to 6 years.
And talk a little bit more about the market specifically. Has the price of graphite increased proportionately to this demand? And on the same note, what has the cost of production done in relation to the demand?
So China's been very dominant. I mean, before, as I said before, China controls the critical minerals really that go into electric vehicles, and predominantly graphite is a major one. So 90% of the graphite end source is from China, 70% of the mines, 100% of the processing. And what China's done in a very protectionist way is lately in the last year, the prices of graphite have come down. So actually what they're doing is they've been flooding the market a lot with the graphite products. So both on the artificial as well as the natural. So about 2 years ago, we saw prices of graphite actually going up as all the demand was coming. Policies were put in place. Electric vehicle demands were starting to actually come into the marketplace. And then we've seen a bit of a cooling off. That's a lot of hype that's been put in there, but the numbers are still massive. And with all the new restrictions the United States have put on, we're starting to see, again, those come into effect in 2025 and 2026 for certain battery materials. For graphite, it's 2027. So what's happening in between is China has been basically ramping up and oversupplying graphite to try and put as much into these markets before the clampdowns come. So that has depressed the prices of graphite, but still, I mean, they're at the prices where we still, when we model it, we can still make money on our mine. And of course, a lot of the profit and margins are when you actually deliver a anode material. So we have feasibility studies, we've modeled it. And again, we right now are a economically profitable venture in terms of us selling our graphite. Not all graphite projects at these particular prices can operate. But again, I encourage customers to go and look at the feasibility studies and look at the individual graphite companies. They do post what their operating costs are, and then you can see where the prices of graphite are by going to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence.
And how exactly is it bought by the end users? And can you compete with other countries in pricing?
So countries, it's actually producers. So again, very few projects right now are actually have mines outside of China. So with the exception of a couple of projects, NextSource and maybe 2 others in the last 5 years have been the only projects outside of China that actually entered into production for a graphite mine. So you're in a very, very unique space by just having a graphite project. And that makes you very attractive to these countries like the United States and Europe. And again, it's really the customers you're looking at two. You're looking at 2 sectors. You're looking at the refractory markets like the ThyssenKrupps that use this for steel making. And then you're looking at and consumer electronics. So the back of your iPhone, the back of your panel, the back of your laptop screen, that's a big sheet of graphite foil. So those are very key applications. And then, of course, you have the battery side. So it's really the OEMs, it's the car companies that are looking to acquire this material. And the issue right now is trying to find projects that actually have a secure source of flake, which is your feedstock, that actually makes the battery grade anode material. And then how do you make that anode material? It is very difficult as a graphite company to suddenly go in there and say, I'm going to produce a battery grade graphite. It's dominated by technical companies in China who have been producing this for years. And all of a sudden you have these new graphite companies that are coming in there trying to say, well, we're going to go and make this material ourselves. It's very difficult to do. And the time frames to get your material qualified with the OEMs is a long process. So NextSource, that's why we went and licensed the technology. We didn't try and do our own research and development. We said, look, this is difficult. This is going to take time, lots of money. Let's just go and find a strategic partner. And we lucked in finding a very, very established, best-in-class processor of this material. And that's who our technical partner is. Once again, supplying 80% of the Japanese OEMs, particularly 2 very dominant EV companies they supply is Tesla and Toyota. That's our technology that we've licensed. That's the technology that we're putting into our plants. and that's exclusive to NextSource.
And so, like you've said, you've mentioned the U.S. has zero graphite in production. So obviously the level of difficulty from discovery to production is pretty massive. How difficult is it to produce this material?
Well, so one of the things we found out so every graphite company is talking to an OEM is talking to every graphite company they can, because they're trying to find alternative sources of this material. They have to be able to decouple from China, for example, and other places that sell the graphite that are foreign entities of concern. So what the OEMs, it's a different language you're talking to them. So they're very used to saying, well, I'm just going to call up a supplier and you tell me how quickly you can get this material. And when they end up realizing that, okay, there's no graphite projects in North America, really, there's only one in Canada, none in the United States, they don't realize that it takes roughly 10 years from a discovery of graphite to get it to a mine. Once you actually have a resource, you have to get funded. And then it takes about 2 to 3 years to actually construct the mine, get it up and running, and actually be at that commercial volumes to be able to produce a graphite. And that's not even the graphite that goes into the battery. That's just a flake graphite. So then you have to then, at that point, build another value-added facility and then do all that value-added technical processing. And then you're in a position to say to the OEM, here, I have a product for you. So it's been a very big learning curve for the OEMs, and they've learned fast. But what's shocking to them is you can build a battery anode facility. You can build a cell manufacturing facility. So for example, a Tesla Gigafactory can be built in about 16 months. Yet if you were to say, okay, there's a graphite project, I need you to get in production, you're looking at 3 to 5 years. And then on top of that is your verification time required, which is another 3 years with an OEM. Now you have a problem. OEM saying, I need product in the next 2 to 3 years. You won't even have a mine built necessarily in that time. So that's the problem. And that's why the OEMs have suddenly realized there's very few projects right now that are in production. If you are in production, you're rare. And number two is, what is your capability of actually taking that and making a battery grade graphite that can go into the battery? That's the product they want to buy. And right now that's dominated by China. And again, if you're looking to do that, that's a long process. NextSource has done a lot of work. We're very much up the curve. We're in a position where we can supply that material starting in 2025 to OEMs. So again, we've been at this now for since 2009. We found the graphite, we've got it in production. We opened up our mine just last year, and the anode facilities already that we're looking and doing in Mauritius, we've already, again, started that process. That'll be up and running, commissioned by the end of this year, in production by early next year. But once again, we have that technical partner, we have the process already, so we know how to make this end material.
Fantastic. Can you clarify, what does it mean when you say you are approaching your nameplate capacity?
So our mine right now is designed to run at 17,000 tons of production annually. So right now we are at that point where we're approaching that run rate. So right now our mine is in production. We entered production just earlier this year, but we're still ramping up. So we're bringing the mine and we're increasing the volumes out of the mine. So nameplate means we'll be at the volumes where we actually are able to produce 17,000 tons per annum by roughly next month. So by July, we should be in a position to say that we are at our full run rate. So again, that's a technical term in the mining thing. Most of the OEMs and anybody you're talking to wants to know, okay, your mine is going to be able to produce this much. Then what is your run rate? What is your nameplate capacity, and when will you achieve that? So you can say my mine can do 17,000, but what if you're only making 5? Well, you're not at nameplate capacity. So we are very close to be achieving that full production.
And where do you currently stand with offtake partners?
So very advanced discussions. I mean, a lot of graphite companies, as I said, every single graphite company is going to be approached by OEMs, and every graphite company is approaching OEMs. So what sets us differently, and I think there's few out there, and again, you can probably count them on one hand. First of all, we have the technical studies. We actually have a producing mine. And again, we have already announced our plans and have already started the construction of an anode facility in Mauritius. So for us, it's really going to the OEMs, and that gives us the ability to have very advanced conversations. So again, we have that ability, and when you're with these companies, they like to pull back the curtain very quickly and say, okay, you guys say you can make this stuff, but show us you can actually do that. And that's where you kind of separate the companies. And again, there's, I would say to investors, There's probably 60 to 70 graphite projects out there. Probably only 10 or 12 actually have feasibility studies. These are studies that you can go and say, okay, what's the capital cost? What does it cost to build this plant? What is the operating cost? What is the cost and the price of graphite? And then you can quickly ascertain what are the economics of that project? Is it profitable or is it not profitable? And then what are their plans? Are they actually making a flake material? Are they actually making a downstream anode material? What is the process and cost for them to do that? So very few projects have got to that stage. The ones that have, then you can read up and, okay, where are they? What are their operating costs? What are they in the lowest quartile of their operating costs? Because it's very important. You have to be able to compete with the elephant in the room, and that's always China when it comes to graphite. So today we have a lot of great things happening in the United States where the administration has put on tariffs, they've put on incentives for electric vehicles. They're basically saying you can't buy from these areas which flood the market. So Chinese graphite, you can't buy it or use it in an electric vehicle come 2027 if you want your subsidies. So this is wonderful news, and this is why you're seeing a lot of projects getting funded and built in North America, especially in the United States, where there's very generous grants and loans being put into all kinds of jurisdictions to say, look, build here, build in this place, set up a facility so you guys don't have to be reliant. We don't have to be reliant on foreign entities concerned, because at the end of the day, there is that big geopolitical issue where what happens if China becomes too dominant on the electric vehicle and they control rare earths, magnets, graphite. And again, if you're trying to actually build a vehicle, you don't want to be allocated or have restrictions in your requirements. And that's why I think it's very important that we all look at trying to find incentives to build and be profitable building in the United States, Canada, Europe, those kind of places.
Well, you encompassed and answered that last question perfectly. Great way to end and close this presentation. Really important work. Thank you for having such an informative presentation as well. And we enjoyed having you back at the conference, Brent.
You're very welcome. And again, I encourage if there's any questions from the viewers, please reach out to me. Again, Brent at NextSourceMaterials.com. And I'd be very happy to answer any questions that I didn't address today.
Perfect. Thank you, Brent. We'll see you again in the near future.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Next up, we will recap the UR Energy presentation. Stay with us.